Well, the legislative session, the regular session, ending a couple of hours ago now. Our State House insiders are with us tonight. Antoine Seawright, our Democratic strategist. Dave Wilson, our Republican strategist, in a rare live insiders segment. So, what they're going to say. Let's talk about what happened.
See, you really want to know what happened is the question.
Let's talk about what happened. What's the good and bad?
There are a lot of great things that took place during this legislative session, but the part that really kind of is the kicker is the popper at the end. You've got a group of Republican, and Antoine's going to cheer for me on this one. You got a small group of Republican legislators who basically said, we're going to hijack the complete restructuring of the healthcare system of South Carolina at the literally last seconds of this legislative session. And it is absolutely insane that they've spent 2 years in this legislature trying to build the new health system in South Carolina, to have a few handful of people decide that they're going to turn around and bust it up.
The extremists have hijacked the Republican Party. And
at least a portion of
them. The extremists have hijacked the Republican Party, and now they've hijacked goodwill, bipartisan compromise in the General Assembly.
And health care.
And that's what we see playing out. At the end of the day, the idea that DHEC and needs to be restructured was a bipartisan thing that's been debated for a very long time.
Yeah.
You get to the goal line and the extremists decide to sack the quarterback. It's a true indication of what politics has become, and it's a sad case of oops. Now, you asked the question about what happened in this General Assembly. Well, this Republican-dominated House and Senate did not do much to improve the overall quality of life, but they did get a budget that will somehow be debated, and we'll see what the outcome of that is. But most of us can't point to one single piece of major legislation that will impact the quality of life for everyday South Carolinians.
Another year, medical marijuana does not pass in South Carolina. A lot of opponents out there have their reasons why, but supporters say it's needed in South Carolina. But once again, it fails to do anything at the State House.
It met the same fate it met last time. It was passed in the South Carolina Senate. It goes to the South Carolina House. And procedurally, I think it got stuck in somebody's desk drawer. It's kind of how it basically ended up. Celeste Davis is the chair of the 3M committee. Medical affairs is basically what they handle. And in that particular committee, she decided not to move the bill forward, which, as the chair of that committee, is her prerogative. So it basically met the same fate.
Look, the things we're talking about are the direct result of elections and consequences, because we know elections have consequences. Whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, or vote for the couch, that means stay at home. The truth of the matter is, if you care about the future of the state, then you have to engage not just every 2 to 4 years in the ballot box. You have to engage on policy decisions that are being made. And I think that's where people get cute and they do not move on legislation that's needed to move our state forward, and so it gets stuck in committee or in a drawer because there's no accountability beyond the ballot box.
And that's the folks, I ran into a guy last night, Fernando, at the car place down the street, and he was basically saying, listen, we're seeing what's going on. You guys get on here and explain it so that we can actually understand what's going on. But folks at home, you understand this. If you want to see action happening, there's two sides to this. One, you've got to know who your legislators are. You got to register to vote, and you got to show up for elections. We'll talk about that in a minute. But you've also got to understand what's actually being done and get a hold of your legislator and let them know, this is what I want.
But again, teacher pay, making sure public schools are funded in the state, taking care of our state employees, making sure we lower costs, making sure we're investing in rural, urban, and suburban South Carolina, job creation, protecting our environment, quality of life things that most people want to talk about at the kitchen table and keep them up at night. Not one person in the General Assembly or in your party can probably say we've done that in good conscience.
I will disagree with you on that, because
just name one thing.
I'll tell you what the one thing was. You got more money back on your state tax return this year than you did the previous year, because state taxes went down. And guess what? It's because of the Republican control.
Oh, you mean all the money that came from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris at the federal government?
No, I'm actually talking about
South Carolina has more money in its pocket than it's ever had before, so they can play around with the numbers and make it seem like money is being returned by the Republican majority.
You
I understand, Dave. I got
that
you.
When your tax return came in, you were actually paying less money to the state government and they actually have accelerated that so that you get more money coming back to you sooner.
But Dave, I think it's important to know most people watching this program forget about trying to make ends meet. They're putting two ends together, hoping they meet. So this idea that we get 5, 10, 20, whatever the amount is back at home does not deal anything with their everyday quality of life.
Absolutely deals with it, Antoine, because that's how you pay for groceries, gas, and all the inflation and all the inflation that we're getting from Bidenomics.
Now we're back to
inflation. Let me mention another couple of things here. The open carry bill passed this year. Have we become the Wild Wild West since it passed?
The Wild Wild West, East, North, and South. And the fact of the matter, law enforcement are scared as you know what, because they don't know what to do. And God forbid something happens and we live in a place of regret, because not that I'm against people being able to carry a weapon, because I'm from Swansea. We know about hunting and fishing and all those things. That's something we do in the country. However, reasonable people would all agree there's certain people in the state who do not need to be able to carry a gun, and we know the dangers that come along with weapons. Again, I'm not anti-people carrying a gun. I'm anti-bad people and people who do not need a gun having a gun.
So the question on that one, JR, is a real question about America.
I'm talking about South Carolina.
No, I'm talking about the Constitution of the United States of America, Antoine, the Second Amendment, and the fact that it actually has, as part of our Constitution, Antoine, the things that Republicans and Democrats swear to uphold.
But Dave,
it is in there to have the unabridged use of the weapon.
No.
Now, can we decide that there might be situations where someone doesn't need to have one, like convicted felons perhaps, or people who have other issues? Can we do that? Of course we can.
I'm not arguing that point. What I'm saying is, if I need a license to drive a car, if I need certifications to do all these things, why in the hell do I not need a license or some sort of formal training to have a gun in my hands at all times and any time? That does not logically make sense to anyone. And if you take off a Republican tie for a second and you lean into
this
truth,
one for you tonight.
if you lean into truth, you would agree that some sort of formal training is needed and necessary for someone to have a gun.
We're down to about a minute. Let me mention no hate crime legislation again in South Carolina. We remain one of 2 states with none on the books. But what happens now? The regular session has ended, but their work is not done. Lawmakers will be coming back, correct?
There are 3 days they're going to come back for. One, they're going to actually be voting on a new Supreme Court justice. That'll be the first thing they come back the first week of June. The next week, they're going to come back for the budget vetoes from the governor. And then on the third one, they're going to be coming back to wrap up everything else that needs to be done with the budget. So that's, the budget and then the budget vetoes is when they're going to come back. So,
in summary, whatever South Carolina Republicans want to happen over those next 3 visits back to the State House, it's ultimately what's going to end up. I just hope and pray at the end that we spend less time there, because the more time they spend there, the more danger it is to the people of South Carolina.
And for those of you who have not registered to vote, make sure that if you want to vote in the primaries coming up on June the 11th, you have until May 11th to get registered in your county. So get that done.
We're out of time. Again, live TV. Dave, Antoine, guys, thank you so very much. We'll be talking again Sunday morning on News 19. We'll be looking forward to that conversation as well. Stay with us.